And I would like to give each school a chance to introduce their members. I know we've got Columbia Theological on the call. Bill, would you like to introduce yourself and anyone else on your team?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Bill Brown. I teach Hebrew Bible at Columbia Theological Seminary. Those on our team include Stan Saunders, who teaches New Testament, and Mark Douglas, who teaches ethics. We're still recovering from having sponsored the Southeast Symposium on Ecologically Informed Theological Education. That was a big success for our institution, I believe, and we're still processing that and how we can utilize that to continue to build the momentum with respect to our work for and with GSI.
Great. Garrett is on the call. Garrett Evangelical. Liz, are you there?
Yes, we are here.
Who is with us from Garrett?
I have Erin Moore with me, who's the Director of Strategic Initiatives here. And there may be someone else listening from their office, but we're the ones in my office.
Great. And what roles do you play there at Garrett?
So I'm the Executive Assistant to the President, and Erin is the Director of Strategic Initiatives.
Great. Thanks for being on the call.
Absolutely.
Did I see Boston participating? Jen?
Yeah, that's me.
Hey.
We're small today. We've had a couple people who are in a defense dissertation. So I'm the sole representative today, and I'm a third-year master's student at BU. So and have been part of our new Green Seminary Initiative team.
Wonderful. Also, our international participant, Carla, is with us from Universidad Bíblica Latinoamericana in San Jose. Carla, would you introduce yourself and tell us about your green team?
Greetings all from Costa Rica and this warm Holy Week here. Our green team has, we lost our 2 students at the end of last year, so we have to reconfigure our team. I'm leading the team. I'm the director of the School of Theological Sciences. We have a professor, David Castillo, from the School of Biblical Sciences. Our facilities manager, Margarita Solano, is also on the team, as well as Damaris Alvarez, who works in our communications program. So that's our team at the moment.
Great. So glad you could join us. MTSO is on the call. Chris, are you there?
I am, but I just got on.
Okay. Just wanted you to introduce yourself. What role do you have at MTSO, and who else is going to be on your green team, with your green team on the call?
So I think it will probably be just me today on the call. So Chris Lofrumento, I'm the Director of Student Services at MTSO and coordinator of the internal green team. And there might be some other folks joining from their various locations today. We're on spring break, so folks are a little all over the place.
Right.
Thanks for hosting us.
Thanks, Chris. I want Drew to introduce all their green team members, and then we'll go into their presentation. Are there any other schools that haven't had a chance to introduce themselves? Okay. Laurel is the green team leader for Drew and the co-founder of Green Seminary Initiative. So I'm going to pass the baton to you.
Well, I am very grateful to all of our team members who did show up, because we too are on break. So thank you to all of you reporting in from different places. And some of you are going to be speaking and may introduce yourselves more fully then. I'll just say that this is Dean Bennett, who we're really thrilled to have a dean on our committee. This is Patrick Kelly, who is sort of helping to coordinate all of the things, keep me coordinated from the student point of view in the Graduate Division of Religion. I see Kaylin Adams on. Wave, Kaylin. who is one of our members from the Master's of Divinity. I see Becca. I don't see Becca. I see her name. Another one of our representatives from the master's programs, and Becca is a former president of the Theological Student Association, and that's been really valuable.
Oh, there she is.
I see her now. And Marcina, I see your name up here too. And Marcina is wonderful. She's a newer addition who we was one of our best participants in the trash audit we did on a cold December day. And then Tina Notis is our sustainability director, and she is going to speak first. We have Joe Biden speaking here this afternoon, and all staff have been told to leave by 3 o'clock. So we are past that, so we will peel off in different ways. But Tina's going to talk about some of the work that the larger university has been doing, and one of the great sources of successes for us is the work that's already been done here. The Sustainability Committee.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. How are you? I just unmuted myself, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about the successes we've had here at Drew University from the grounds standpoint, waste, food, and then from food, I'll turn it over to the rest of the Drew folks on here to talk a little bit more about that, since food is so big and so important to everyone. So starting off with grounds, we have a native plant policy here at Drew University, and what that means is all the plants that are permanently planted on our campus must be native. Now that includes trees. All of our trees are required to be native trees as well. So the way that works for us is we have the plants that are planted and the trees come through my office, and I just double check that they're native. Of course, there's a lot of, alternatives that I have to give sometimes because landscapers sometimes may not know what native is, but that's our policy, so we require that. We also have a one-to-one tree replacement policy, so any trees that are cut down, whether they're dead or they had to be cut down for other reasons, we replace them on a one-to-one ratio. And that is always really fun, especially in the spring when we're planting tons of trees. We also have a policy that is followed, I think, on a lot of campuses called integrative pest management. So, for example, we're only spraying for a pesticide if we deem that there's a need for it. For example, we had gypsy moths a few years ago, and gypsy moths could, be devastating to a lot of our trees. So at that instance, we did spray a little bit, but we are constantly monitoring the situation and seeing, if we even need to spray. So other than that, we don't spray any pesticides on campus, and we don't use fertilization on our grass, except for our athletic fields, which is the only location that we do fertilize. So you'll notice our athletic fields are very green in color. I want to talk a little bit about our waste. Waste is actually, it's become a little bit simpler here at Drew University. For a few years now, we've switched over to single stream recycling. And what that means is we combine bottles, cans, and paper category of recycling together in the same bin. So we have one bin for recycling the common items. So we still separate electronic recycling like computers, batteries, light bulbs, but we've simplified recycling with single stream. And that's been helpful for people. And we've also conducted a waste audit in the winter of last year that Laurel mentioned, and that was really helpful in seeing, what are people throwing out? What are they not understanding still that, they need to understand for recycling properly? And we still see a lot of paper. A lot of paper still gets thrown out, which is unfortunate because it's so heavy. And it would be great to recycle more paper. So that's one of the things that, we're going to be working on. We also are a signatory. We were the second school to sign on to the Real Food Commitment. And that means that we have a commitment by 2020 to purchase and provide food that is real, which means local, organic, fair trade, or humane. So we've already met that 20% commitment, but we're trying to work towards increasing that. And I do want to share, if I could share my screen, I do want to share this resource. I think I know how to do this. Share screen. Okay, here we go. I'm going to try to do it. I want to share this resource. So hopefully everyone can see this. Maybe someone can give
There you
me
go.
if you do. You see it?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, great. So this is a resource hub provided by Ayres, which is an organization called the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. This is a great resource for higher ed, but also for other organizations that want to see what others have done. And you can click on any of these areas and see what other constituents are doing. So if you click on energy, okay, so it looks like when I share the screen, it slows down the.
And let me interject real quickly, Tina. Green Seminary Initiative has just joined as a nonprofit member of Ayres. So we look forward to partnering with them as a way to access, some resources that'll be helpful for our schools.
Fantastic. So you could use the Green Seminary email address, or so some of these resources you could see here have a little lock on them. So that's only eligible to Ayres members. And so if you're interested in a resource that has a lock on it, you could ask for the email address that Green Faith is under, and that's how you unlock the locked resources. So there's a ton of opportunities to look at what other schools are already doing, and for example, water. I'm clicking on water. It's taking a while, but it's usually faster.
Yeah, and we are going to need to keep an eye on the clock right now.
So,
we want to give some
so
time.
that's mostly what I wanted to talk about, and you can view all water resources here by clicking there, and if you want to look at a particular school's water program, you can do that here, and if there's something you need to access, just ask Green Faith for the email. So I want to turn it over to Laurel and.
Thanks, because we got another member who has to leave pretty quickly, but Patrick Kelly is working somewhat on our public leadership
and governance
efforts. Yes.
Excellent.
So I've just been meeting mainly with the financial officers and the treasurer of the university to discuss issues around socially responsible investment that has lapsed, that used to be a part of our endowment policies, that still remains, but there isn't a committee any longer influencing that. So that's mainly what I've been working on, is working with the treasurer and getting access to the board of trustees for the GSI and the university more broadly, the students more broadly.
And we really hope that as part of the certification efforts, we can broaden this conversation. It's been a conversation that's had here. We are a Methodist institution, and that should provide a lot of values that are behind our investing. So we're really grateful for forming a team that's going to further that conversation. And safe travels.
Thanks.
Thanks, Patrick. Great to see you.
And Tina, do you need to go also? We're not hearing you.
I'm answering some questions here in the group chat, and I'll probably pop off after that. But feel free to email Laurel or anyone else at Drew. And if you have any questions for Drew specifically, they can bring them to me.
Great. Thanks so much, Tina.
Thank you.
I think Dean Bennett is going to talk just a minute or two, and then either I'll come on or I'm trying to see who else of our team is wanting to talk quickly. We have so much going on, and that's a success and a challenge.
Right.
Hi, everybody. My name's Tanya. You don't have to call me Dean Bennett. Before I stepped into the Dean's office a year and a half ago, I had served as the university chaplain and the director of worship for the theological school for 15 years. And in the course of that time, we made connecting our spirituality with the earth, with the planet, a regular part of our worshiping life and a regular part of our ritual action across campus. And I think that that's really helped to ground us theologically in this kind of work. It's also involved the students developing these worship services, and so that's furthered their research and their involvement in not only shaping liturgy, but also in really shaping it in a way that is eco-justice oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually a regular part of our worship vocabulary, is how does the earth fit with our understanding of ourselves as human beings, and what's our relationship there, and what is the holy, the divine that is in all of us and all things. The other thing I wanted to mention is I now in my current role, I am responsible for all of the internship placements across our degree programs. And this coming academic year, we will have 2 students who are very specifically doing eco-justice internships, one with United Methodist Women, which is the largest women's faith-based organization in the world. And so this is a global eco-justice initiative that they're working on there. And the second with Green Faith. So we're very happy to have a student back with Green Faith, which we haven't had in a while. I mean, it is our intention that our students take their eco-justice inclinations wherever they serve in their internships, but these are 2 that are quite specifically oriented that way.
Great.
And talking that much about curriculum, since I was a featured speaker on that section last time, that is one of our strengths, that we do have it in our required courses, and it's going to be going even further across our new curriculum. And so that's really wonderful. One of the things that our worship team did was start a folder of collecting all the programs and materials and stuff, so that it's more readily accessible for our students when they want to plan either a service or an event in their home area, or when they're working on something. Now, Becca worked on an Eco Palms chapel, for instance, that we didn't get to do because we had another nor'easter. I want to talk a little bit about some of our food initiatives, but I want to just check in with Becca or Kaylin if you want to come in with some of the areas you've been working on. Kaylin, you want to shake your head yes or no? Kaylin says no. Becca?
I think, well, I was thinking about food. I was thinking about reporting a little bit about food. And so basically we eat a lot at some hall. We have a lot of communal meals, and so there's been some concern about silverware and reusable and compostable silverware versus plastic silverware versus reusable cutlery and plates, and trying to get as many ecologically friendly options as we can get. A lot of conversations about food. And so I think over about the past year, we've started a few students have taken the headway of collaborating with our catering department to make sure that we have do have compostable cutlery. And also we've had conversations about food options. And so the theological school, there was a group of students, my understanding is about 10 years ago, wrote up a food covenant to not serve beef or red meat or pork at theological school events, so that we're not spending our money on those particular meats because they have such a high carbon footprint. And so we've been focusing on chicken, and sometimes meat does show up, and so we've renewed our efforts around those things. And so that's been a topic in our student organization about our food covenant. And as we were just recently rewriting our constitution, we decided that we put a little line in there that our student funds would not be used on red beef unless it was a particular cultural significance, which it so there's that balance between student needs and then also the ecological impact. And so we are working to balance that. We are having this conversation. But I think that one of the wonderful things about our relationship with the catering department over the last year has been shown is that they found some reusable plates that they weren't using anymore, and so they offered to give it to the theological school.
Very nice.
So that we can store it. And we've had a couple of students who have taken the initiative to start to have to-go packets available for people to take food after those things. And so there's been a lot of student engagement around food and negotiating with the institution about how to get certain options and to keep the ecological concerns in mind as we order food, thinking about how to hold each other accountable if things show up on our food tables that don't match what they're supposed to be in lieu of all of these conversations.
Right.
So that's felt very fruitful, the relationship building around this issue. And so I'm interested to see how that student engagement can continue.
That's awesome. Laurel, we are going to need to probably shift into our next section to make sure we allow enough conversation with Jen around faculty development. You got 30 seconds to add anything else in before we shift gears a little bit?
We're blessed with a lot of energy, a lot of history to build on. And I think as we recruit even bigger, I think it'll go farther. So it's developing that community ethos where these are the kind of things people think of, and doing better signage just to remind people of all these initiatives and practices. So I'm just grateful to all of y'all, and thank you for talking.
Thank you. And next month, we will hear from the Green Team with BU School of Theology. So we look forward to hearing what all the good things that are going on in Boston. Abby, can you introduce our special guest?
Yeah, so the Reverend Dr. Jennifer Ayres is going to talk a little bit about A.2, and I'm going to share those standards in the chat box so that if you don't have them already up, you can click that link and get to them very quickly. Dr. Ayres is the Associate Professor of Religious Education and also the Director of Religious Education Program at the Candler School of Theology at Emory. She also is on the advisory committee for Green Seminary Initiative, and she's going to talk about faculty development, and will be available to think through questions or ideas in this conversation. She's going to talk for about 5 minutes, and then there will be space for talking around A.2. So thanks, Jennifer, for joining us, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you. I think my primary advice is going to be everyone should just go hang out at Drew. Now, I'm happy to talk about this because I think it's one of the more, I take these earbuds out, they're driving me a little bit crazy. I think it's one of the more challenging pieces to imagine as a green team how you're going to affect change in your institutions. And so if you're willing, in the chat box, why don't some of you type some of the barriers that you see toward faculty development in relationship to themes of theology and ecology. And I'll address those in just a second. But just to rehearse for you, there's only the purpose of the faculty development standard is to facilitate seminary faculty development in the broad area of theology and ecology as defined in A1, which you discussed last time. And that the seminary will seek ways to encourage faculty to integrate such content into coursework and provide opportunity for faculty to develop skills and competency in this regard. And there's only one requirement and then a couple of electives to choose from. And the requirement is that the seminary on its own or in collaboration with the GSI or other schools, institutions, not schools, educational institutions, regularly facilitates substantive faculty and instructor development in relevant areas within theology and ecology. And then there are two kind of defined electives, and then one, just sort of what you come up with. And you just have to complete one other one. And the first one has to do with public scholarly activity of the faculty, addressing the relationship between religion and ecology. And the second is that faculty members engage with their peers to offer multidisciplinary or integrated classes. And I have some examples of each of these things. So I think what I'll do is just share those examples and then answer any questions that you might have. I'm going to do that thing that was totally annoying to me when I taught at McCormick, which was a school with a relatively modest budget. And I'm going to show you what Emory does in regard to faculty development around sustainability, which is not something that's accessible to a lot of schools. But I do think it is instructive. So I'm going to try to share my screen. Tina did it so successfully before. I'm confident that I can do it too.
You can do it.
There's that last button you have to press. Okay, can you guys see that?
There it is.
Okay, so this is Emory University's Piedmont Project, which is a university-wide initiative to basically do faculty development in relationship to themes of sustainability. And it is basically one thing, and that is it is a summer program where faculty propose an innovation in a current course or a new course that addresses themes of sustainability. There's an application process, and it is incentivized by a $1,000 stipend. Participants go for 2 days and meet with other members of their cohort. And so sometimes people leave with just, one unit that incorporates some of these things. Other people are transforming entire courses. So they meet for those 2 days and work on their projects. And then at the end of the summer, after they've ostensibly been sort of developing these themes further, they meet for a little half-day field trip. And that's probably what some of these pictures are that you're seeing. So now I'm going to stop sharing. Let's see if I can do that too. Okay, yeah. And so I think it's a nice, compact, and not too onerous model. It makes use of faculty, the time that faculty have to think creatively about their courses, but it doesn't eat away too much of their summers. And it has this incentive. And for schools that don't have resources to pay faculty $1,000, they might be able to do something like each year have a faculty fellowship, like one person who does that, that kind of innovation in their teaching. And I can answer more questions about the Piedmont Project, but I would say at Candler, we've probably got 7 or 8 faculty who've done it. And one of the things that they really appreciate about it is that most of them, they're not averse to questions of sustainability, but really for them, the payoff is thinking about their pedagogy. It's not just about how does this green my course, but how does it just strengthen my teaching? And so I think that's an important piece of it. I see a question about sharing the daily schedule. I don't know if that's available, but I will check once I've stopped talking and try to post it there. But and I'll also post the link to the Piedmont Project where you can kind of drill down and see some of that. So that's an example for the kind of required activity for a standard A2 as a means of supporting faculty instructor development. Public scholarly activity of our faculty, sometimes I'm surprised at how many of my colleagues actually are addressing themes of sustainability. And to me, the primary obstacle to meeting this elective is the reporting. So knowing what your colleagues are doing, I mean, I see a lot of people nodding their heads. Like, I found out last year that Robert Franklin actually has been doing a couple of talks around ecology in the church, and he went to, I don't remember what the recent international event was, but he was there. And he's been doing some work with Grace Kim, who's at Earlham School of Religion. And so this isn't something that he reports that we talk a lot about at CanLearn. So at an institution where people are sort of out doing their own thing, we have an issue of trying to bring that into the ecology of our school and our faculty discussions. So yeah, ideas about how to get that reported back to the institution in a way that gets funneled to the green team would be good. I'm sure they're putting it in their reports, but I don't read everyone's reports as regularly as I should. And then finally, the second elective, multidisciplinary integrated classes. I know a couple of examples of this. When I was at McCormick, we actually collaborated with Alma College in Michigan to offer a class on food and globalization. And so we were able to work together with faculty in sociology, sociology of food, for example. And that was a way for a very small school like McCormick to expand. I mean, we're a small theological school, so we didn't have I mean, we're multidisciplinary in terms of the theological disciplines, but we didn't have within our own faculty those people to work with. And so that was a really fun opportunity. I think it was funded by a denominational grant on globalization. And then I know that Columbia Theological Seminary has offered a class in conjunction with Agnes Scott, with an astronomy professor, Agnes Scott, who happens to be a very active layperson at a Presbyterian church here in town. And so making those connections with other institutions, I think, is important. So I've talked probably more than 5 minutes already, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And I will look for the schedule for the 2-day course, but I'll also put the link for the Piedmont project.
Great. Any questions or suggestions to discuss together from anyone?
This is Laurel, and Jen, I just heard you speak at that one from Columbia. And I think what everyone is hungry for are the kind of pedagogical ideas, the different ways to make these issues come alive. I know both Tim and I spoke there also, and that's what people were hungry for, is kinds of assignments, even kinds of things maybe share with colleagues in other disciplines. And you do wonderful work both on pedagogy and education, but also on practices and building those into your syllabi. And I'm just wondering if there's anything you would share from your position, both working on this in larger pictures and also in your own work.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll say 2 quick things. No one took my bait on what do you think the challenges are to faculty development, but I think the primary challenge, and this is one that I have faced as a person whose background is not in ecology, who's trying to enter this conversation kind of sideways, is the science barrier of, like, am I going to be able to understand, speak intelligently, and participate in conversations in which I'm not the expert? And as a practical theologian, expertise is less important to me than it is for some of my other colleagues. But I think that that's one of the challenges. And one of the ways I've gotten around it has been related to pedagogical practices that are deeply place-based, for example. And so one assignment I do is asking students to do a digital story about a place that shapes them or shapes their identities. And so that requires listening and understanding more about those students' places. It also requires some attention to intersectional ecologies. That's sort of at the root of that assignment. But yeah, I think it's also about what is the pedagogical framework that you bring to courses as you're trying to make them more ecologically grounded? And it's not necessarily that you need to master and then communicate the environmental science to students. It's not a content question. It's a question of pedagogical practices. And so we do walk and talks in the woods near campus. We visit sites around the built environment of campus, and ask how that changes our discussions, and things like that. I don't know if I'm really answering your question, Laurel, but those are some examples of what I do. But I guess I'm a little bit hesitant to say too much about it because I don't feel like that's enough. And one of the things that I long for, actually, and maybe you guys have examples of this, is I need someone to teach me my bioregion here in Atlanta. I need someone with that kind of geology, biology, expertise related to the bioregion in which I now live, who can help me understand it better so that I can better design assignments, classes, and even research that engages the place where I'm teaching now. And maybe some of your schools have done that. I think that would be a great faculty development project, is to
Excellent suggestion.
have a person that does that. What trees do you have? What birds do you have?
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Sorry.
I have a different question, so if you've got something that relates to that, I will cede the floor.
So I'm Stan from Columbia. I've been on for the last half hour here. And I was just going to add that one thing that helps us, and at least has up until now, and I think it will continue to do so, is to use the integrated classes that we have as a way to at least sneak, if not make ecology concerns kind of primary, at least sneak them onto into the agenda for those courses. So we're in the fourth year of doing a starting integrated course called Imagination and Resilience, and we always do the resilience piece around both personal matters, but also around the larger environmental frame. So I would say integrated courses, because ecology is integrative in itself. It seems like that's the obvious place to put it.
Right.
Thanks, Dan. Jen from BU.
Yeah, I can say that at least related to the last point that Jen was speaking about, is that we've had at least one faculty member who said, well, I wouldn't have thought to put environmental issues into my courses because I'm not an expert on it and I wouldn't know how to teach it. Right. So I think that's definitely a barrier. One of the things that I worry about as a student is, and this might be more perceived than real, is the concern that faculty are resistant to changing their courses, especially the faculty that have been around for a long time and have done their courses the same for 15 years or whatnot. And I don't know how to perhaps overcome the perceived resistance that we might face, but also the actual resistance that is also possible.
Yeah. Are you talking about the faculty who have to blow the dust off their notes when they start their lectures?
Well, I'm sure there's a few of them, but I have some professors that are just so adeptly competent in the way that they've established their pedagogy, and I have a hard time imagining asking them to change it when they're so effective in the way that they do it.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that the incentivizing of faculty development in this area is really important and helpful. And it's so silly, but seminary faculty, I think, are just as motivated by public recognition as middle schoolers are. So if there's an award or some sort of public recognition of your own development in these areas. I mean, Candler just instituted, I hate the name of this, a Master Teacher Award. But the idea is that you do some sort of pedagogical innovation, and then you are the holder of that award for the year. I think something like that could work on sustainability issues too. But yeah, I mean, I think given all the institutional obligations that most of us are carrying, we all want to revision our classes every semester, and rarely do we find the time to do that. So incentivizing it sort of makes you find the time to do that.
Good. Dennis Testerman with Union Seminary at Charlotte had joined us. We did introductions at the beginning of the hour, Dennis, so you weren't there. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about the Fly Over Country app? Are you there?
I'm here. Just remembering where the unmute button is. Yeah, so Dennis, I live outside of Charlotte. I like a semi-rural area where I can. Last spring, I was watching a pack of red wolves that had been born play on my septic field. You don't get that in your average subdivision. On a larger scale, just in terms of traveling around the country, one of my pet peeves is when I go to environmental conferences. Presbyterians for Earth Care would be an example, and well, actually, it wouldn't be an example, but there are conferences I go to when I was working as a conservationist, and you wouldn't learn anything about the place that you were in for your conference. So I've taken my own responsibility for learning a little bit about places and using Flyover app. I happen to have an iPhone and just downloaded that, and you can download the path that you're going to be traveling, you know, like from Charlotte to Atlanta, and that app, once the data is downloaded, your GPS tracking capability of the phone will keep track of where you're at on that path and will tell you what's on the landscape below you. So I always get a window seat just to look at lines on the land, but now with the app I can learn so much more about what river I've just flown over or what mountain range and what's unique about a particular area.
Cool. Some of you may have questions on this particular section after this call. You can send those to us, and we can convey those to Jen. Jen, if you can continue to be our mentor, we would appreciate it. And we're so grateful for you being with us on this call and facilitating this important conversation.
I really agreed to do it so that I could get suggestions from the cohort. Yeah.
Well, and are you writing a book?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that.
Oh gosh, it's a book on ecological religious education. So, based in a theology of inhabitants and what kinds of pedagogical frameworks and practices nurture a human understanding of ourselves as inhabitants.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again on that. And I want to make sure that we do save this last portion of the call together. If there's anything from anyone on any section, any other section that we need to talk about. Abby, have we had any additional questions or comments?
We haven't. What I was going to say, though, is that I'm going to put the link to our Facebook group in the chat box as well, so that if there's additional questions or more conversation that we want to have, that's a place that we can have that.
Excellent.
So that's going in now.
Okay. Thank you.
And then I'm going back on mute because we are very loud about landscaping today. So.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. Okay. Any additional comments or questions for Jen? Or is someone trying to talk?
I was just going to say that we're also glad to answer questions about Drew and what we do.
Right.
As we get into that and some of the practices and pedagogical things we do.
Well, Laurel, could you speak to that?
One of the things that I heard both in Stan's and Jen's comments and here is, how do you use your campus And we have students that come from a wide variety of settings, some from various parts of New York City that are very, very urban and city, and others that come from even more rural areas than we are. But to try and use your campus grounds as a place just to get to know the critters and the flora of your area. But also one thing I do in the classroom is my students, I ask them to spend 15 minutes outside of the same place for the whole semester. So 15 minutes twice a week, observing and learning what happens in that place, what they learn from that place. And that often is the most difficult assignment I give. And the wonderful thing is immense teaching happens, and it's not from me as the teacher, it's they're learning from place. And so that one is a great one. And many of us doing this work use environmental autobiographies in some ways, and just hearing Jen present on a digital way of doing that was really inspiring to get students to think about their various ways that their views of creation of nature, of relating to the environment, have been shaped by their upbringing, their churches, their families, what they've read, the news, the big events of their lives. But I was just thinking that might be interesting to do with all of our faculty. And just get them to name the places where they come in, or it's been shaped. I know, just like you don't know where your colleagues present, you don't also know the kind of recreation they do. Or we have a faculty member who started wild sourdough starter, you know. So just these other hobbies and stuff they might have that you don't know, and are ways that you can then build common ground in some ways of doing this work.
Good.
Yeah, and I frequently in the formation classes in the first year try to relate to spiritual disciplines to outside, getting outside the classroom. So if we're practicing prayer walking, we'll go to the Arboretum and walk around the ponds in the Arboretum and think about, or touch the trees, or, you know, a way of just take off our shoes, right, and stand on the ground. Ways of just connecting ourselves with earth that is different. Well, you know, right, the theological terminology of holy ground, what does it mean?
Nice.
And how are we connected to it?
Very good. What else is happening at other schools? Any suggestions or dreams? What should be happening? You know, as we were collecting resources to be helpful for all of these different sections, this was an area that we couldn't find as much. And we realized this may be an area where we need to create together some new resources and some new models to share.
One thing that hasn't come up yet, this is Jen from BU again, that I think about. So our campus is very urban. We do have a river out back, but there's a busy road in between us and the river, and we have almost no green space on our campus. So some of these suggestions about spiritual practice outdoors is not as conducive for us. So, you know, it makes me think about the challenges of an urban campus, for one thing. But one of the things that we do have that I think, at least at a topical level, we have a really strong emphasis on social justice. And so in terms of helping faculty enter into the conversation, one way they can do that is through eco-justice. That it doesn't always have to be about connection with nature, but it could also be about how our communities impacted by their environment. And I think that the idea of spiritual autobiographies is really powerful, because I'm sure a lot of us could have some kind of environmental justice component to our stories. So that was just another avenue into the conversation about faculty engagement.
Well, Abby, where are we on time? Looks like we're
We have about 3 more minutes.
needing to wind down.
So I wonder if, as we're winding down, we could just let's remind everyone about when the next meeting is. and who is going to be leading us? So,
Well, it's every last Wednesday of the month. So that would be Wednesday, April 25th. We will have with us Beth Norcross as our mentor, leading us in a conversation on 8.3, Eco-Spiritual Formation. Beth is co-founder with Laurel of the Green Seminary Initiative, and she's also executive director of the newly formed Center for Spirituality and Nature, which is based in DC, where she is. And she's an adjunct faculty member at Wesley Theological Seminary. So we'll be delighted to have Beth with us on the call. And again, we will hear some highlights from the Green Team at Boston University School of Theology. So Jen Blesh, get your team ready. Okay.
And we'll be sending out the recording from this conversation along with links to some of the things that were talked about today. And then also the links to the Facebook group and the Facebook page. Right.
And with each of these monthly highlight reports from each of you, we're putting those onto our website in the blog post. So you can refer to that. Everyone can refer to that and learn what each other is doing and encourage one another.
And Abby, I hope that, and Stan and Bill, that the wonderful conference that y'all just hosted and some parts of it were recorded will be shared. I find these regional conferences to just be really rich in ideas and resources, particularly for curriculum work. Yeah. But just once again to say the Columbia one really brought forward a lot of the issues that even Mary was bringing up of how do you talk about these issues in more urban settings, how do you really bring in justice issues, or how do you really make sure that your approaches are intersectional and bring in race, bring in class, bring in gender and all sorts of things. So those are just great resources and a really great science talk from a meteorologist, I guess, is an atmospheric scientist who gave us lots of ways to talk about it.
Yes. So the conference that Laurel has referred to and Bill has referred to and that Jen also alluded to was the Southeast Regional Symposium. We regularly have regional symposiums as one of the other programs that we do as part of our GSI book of programs. The next one will be out west, and we'll have more information about opportunities to share in the future. Laurel, you're shaking your head.
Never mind.
Okay. So that's an opportunity for people in that region to join us in person. And then the recordings from all of that conference proceedings will be available probably on our website, but definitely through our monthly e-newsletter. And you can sign up for that if you're not already signed up for that on our website.
Right. Okay. I think we need to close. We appreciate everybody's time. We will get this recording out to each of you and all of your Green Team members that weren't able to attend. With many thanks to Jennifer Ayres. Thank you for this important conversation. And thanks to the Drew Green Team. So keep up the good work, everyone. And we'll see you next month. Bye.